Rue's upset. Well, what about me?
Today, we're breaking down one of the most iconic characters from one of Disney's biggest franchises. I'm Dr. Flashback, and we're breaking down Bunny Boy, or maybe you know him as Old Long Ears. Now, if we're being real, Rabbit might be one of the most underrated characters in all of Winnie the Pooh. Everybody remembers Pooh for his innocence, Tigger for his energy, Eeyore for his gloom, and Piglet for his anxiety. But Rabbit was the one trying to keep everything in balance. He was the unofficial manager of the 100 Acre Wood, the self-appointed organizer, the we-need-a-plan type of friend. And while that made him the reliable one, it also made him the most stressed out, because when you're surrounded by dreamers, bouncers, and honey-eaters, being the responsible one starts to feel like a full-time job. He woke up every morning thinking about chores. He kept his garden spotless. He memorized what day it was and which vegetables needed tending. He probably even had a mental list of who owed him favors. But the thing is, the 100 Acre Wood wasn't built for structure. It was built for wonder, curiosity, and a little bit of chaos. So Rabbit was basically trying to maintain order in a world that refused to stay orderly. And that right there is why he was always so grumpy. His grumpiness wasn't just about anger, it was about frustration. Imagine being surrounded by people who never listen, who keep breaking your fences, who show up uninvited to your garden, who eat your food, who turn every serious moment into a mess. That's Rabbit's daily life. He wasn't mad because he hated his friends. He was mad because he cared too much. He wanted them to do better. He wanted them to think before acting. But every time he tried to bring a little logic into the picture, someone, usually Tigger, would bounce all over it. Tigger was the ultimate test of Rabbit's patience. You could see it in Rabbit's face every time Tigger said, "Woo-hoo, hoo-hoo!" Rabbit's eye would twitch, his ears would droop, and you could almost hear him thinking, "Here we go again." He respected Tigger deep down, but he couldn't handle the energy. Rabbit was a routine guy, breakfast at this time, gardening at that time, no interruptions. Tigger, on the other hand, was pure impulse. He didn't mean harm, he just didn't think. And that was Rabbit's nightmare. That's what made their dynamic so fascinating. They were total opposites. Rabbit represented control, while Tigger represented freedom. Rabbit planned, Tigger lived. Rabbit wanted calm, Tigger brought chaos. And yet, over time, they taught each other balance. Rabbit learned that sometimes life needs a little bouncing. And Tigger learned, well, not a lot, but a little, about boundaries. When Rabbit took things too far, though, you could tell it wasn't out of cruelty, it was out of exhaustion. Like that time he convinced the gang to unbounce Tigger. He really tried to humble Tigger by showing him what it felt like when people didn't want him around. That's cold, right? But here's the twist. Once Tigger was actually gone, Rabbit felt awful. The forest felt too quiet. The fun was gone. Rabbit realized that as much as Tigger drove him crazy, the chaos gave his life purpose. He missed it. That moment said everything. Rabbit didn't hate joy, he just didn't know how to handle it. It's the same with Pooh. Rabbit often treated Pooh like a slow, honey-obsessed kid who never learned his lesson. But deep down, Rabbit admired Pooh's peaceful spirit. He just didn't understand how someone could be that carefree. To Rabbit, Pooh's calmness felt like irresponsibility, but to everyone else, it was peace. And when Rabbit finally saw how Pooh's simple thinking could bring people together, you could tell he softened up a little. And don't forget Piglet. Rabbit was like a big brother to him. Yeah, he could boss Piglet around sometimes, but he also protected him. When danger hit, Rabbit always made sure Piglet was safe. He'd roll his eyes about it, but he'd still take charge. He had that "I complain because I care" type of energy. When you think about it, Rabbit might have been the only character who understood the importance of teamwork. He was always organizing search parties, community projects, and plans to fix whatever mess the others made. He might have been fussy about it, but he was always there. That's love in disguise. He showed love through leadership, and it wasn't easy for him to show his softer side. You had to catch it in rare moments, like when he'd let Pooh have a spoonful of honey even after yelling at him, or when he'd sigh and let Tigger help out again after saying he never wanted to see him bounce again. Those moments showed that under the prickly exterior was a heart of gold. Rabbit's home, especially his garden, was his pride and joy. That was his safe space, his sanctuary. Every time someone messed with it, he took it personally. His garden wasn't just a hobby, it was the one thing he could control. When Tigger destroyed it, it wasn't just vegetables being crushed, it was Rabbit's sense of order being shattered. That's why he reacted so strongly. To him, chaos wasn't fun, it was anxiety. And that's the key to understanding Rabbit. He wasn't mean, he was anxious. He worried constantly. He was the embodiment of what happens when you carry the weight of everyone else's mistakes. He micromanaged because he didn't trust things to go right. He overplanned because he'd seen too many disasters. And when things went wrong, he blamed himself. He just masked it with attitude. That's why when Rabbit finally relaxed, when he allowed himself to have fun, those scenes hit differently. Like when he'd finally join in on a song or laugh at something Tigger did, you could tell in those brief flashes that Rabbit wanted to be carefree. He just didn't know how. And the beautiful part? His friends never gave up on him. They didn't judge him for being grumpy. They didn't abandon him when he snapped. They always came back, and that slowly chipped away at his walls. Even when he was stubborn, the 100 Acre Wood reminded him that love doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be real. You could even say Rabbit represented the part of growing up that everyone faces, that shift from wonder to worry. When you're a kid, everything's adventure. When you're an adult, everything's responsibility. Rabbit was that in cartoon form. He wanted everything to make sense. But the forest around him reminded him daily that life doesn't always make sense. And that's okay. Another thing people forget, Rabbit wasn't just bossy, he was incredibly resourceful. He fixed things, built things, organized events, and somehow kept the entire forest functioning. When the others needed something done, they called Rabbit. He might complain, but he'd still do it. That's love through action. And he wasn't afraid to stand up to anyone either. Remember, this is a rabbit surrounded by animals way bigger than him. A bear, a tiger, a kangaroo. And he still talked to them like he ran the whole place. That confidence came from experience. Rabbit knew that being loud wasn't the same as being right, so he made sure his voice was heard. When you look closer, Rabbit's storylines often carried some of the deepest lessons, like learning to forgive, learning to relax, learning to admit when he's wrong. He might not have sung about friendship like Pooh did, but he lived it. Every time he came back after an argument, every time he opened his door after saying he was done, that was growth. You could tell Rabbit craved connection, even when he pretended not to. He'd act like he didn't want company, but he hated being alone. That's why he talked to himself so much. It was his way of filling the silence. He was lonely, but too proud to admit it. And that loneliness, that quiet vulnerability, made his friendship with the others so important. It balanced him out. Pooh taught him patience. Piglet taught him empathy. Tigger taught him spontaneity. Eeyore taught him perspective. Each one helped Rabbit loosen that grip just a little bit. It's funny because Rabbit's grumpiness actually kept the story grounded. Every time things got too silly, Rabbit brought it back down. He was the reality check, the one reminding everyone that actions have consequences. But he also reminded us that even serious people need to laugh sometimes. He might not have been the warmest hugger, but he was dependable. He didn't always say, "I love you," but his actions did. Like when he stayed up late, helping a friend, or shared food from his garden, or took the lead in fixing something that wasn't even his fault. That's Rabbit's love language, doing, not talking. And in a world where everyone else lived in the moment, Rabbit was the one thinking about tomorrow. That's not bad. That's balance. Because while Pooh and the gang represented innocence, Rabbit represented wisdom. He was proof that being a grown-up doesn't mean you stop caring. It just means you care differently. If you ever rewatch the new adventures of Winnie the Pooh or the Tigger movie, look at Rabbit's expressions. You'll see a character who's tired, yes, but also hopeful. He complains, but he still shows up. He gets frustrated, but he never leaves. And that's why he's so relatable. Because in life, we're all rabbits sometimes. We're all trying to keep things in order while the world bounces around us. When you think about it, Rabbit was the glue of the group. Without him, the 100 Acre Wood would fall into complete chaos. He was the planner, the realist, the fixer, the voice of reason, but also the quiet heart that learned, little by little, that imperfection can still be beautiful. So yeah, Rabbit could be grumpy, he could be bossy, he could take it too far, but he was also loyal, caring, and protective. And when you peel back the layers, you realize he wasn't the grumpy one. He was the grown one, the one holding it all together while still learning to let go.